Hello there and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer and for the first time in many weeks I am joined by my close associate, Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Ron and Don Harris of the Terrace get together? Shaughan, you have absolutely no idea who I am talking about, but your Evan McFarlanes of this world will. They were two generic tall men who wrestled for the WWF and WCW in the 90s and early 2000s. They were very boring. They didn't have that much hair, but they were quite tall. It sounds like I'm describing Graham Thewlis here. I'm not. What you and I are going to do, Shaughan, is we are going to form a tag team of our own to take on lower league Scottish football. We will deliver a devastating lariat clothesline and we'll pin it to win some kind of title belt. Exactly what that title belt is remains to be seen. But it's to get to see who gets to spend the next hour or so talking about one game from the Championship, another from League One, and a third and final fixture from League Two, as well as looking a little bit about how the lower league sides performed in the Scottish Cup. How does that sound?
That sounds class. The only thing I would ask was, see this tag team, did they have a name, or was that literally their name?
That was their real name. They were part of the Disciples of the Apocalypse. They were the Powers That Be. They were, I think they were Don and Eli Bluth. They were 6'5". They were quite like imposing specimens. They looked like somebody who would do the security at a provincial nightclub, but they weren't very good in the ring at all. Not very good in the ring at all.
Right, okay, because I'm familiar with people like Luke and Butch, the bushwhackers.
Yes.
But they weren't tall.
Yes,
they weren't very good either.
I went for sort of a niche reference at a very slight, very small, but very enthusiastic intersection of our listeners will go for. And I hope that by comparing myself and Shaughan to Ron and Don Harris, it popped one or two of you. If you are one of the two of us, please let us know and we'll continue with some fairly obscure references. Who knows, we'll come back comparing us to Kai and Tai at some point. But nevertheless, Shaughan, where have you been, bitch? Where have you bloody been?
So I've been to Tenerife.
Right.
It was totally class. Always think it's very funny when like you go to somewhere where it's just constantly hot. It's like, this is like a completely different way of life. You just get up in the morning, you go for a walk, you go to the pool, you get a bit of sun. It's just class. A completely different way of living. And especially when you've been under like kind of frost, snow and ice for 3 months, I do enjoy getting away in maybe January or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose if you lived in those conditions and you had to work, you'd probably be like, my goodness, I can't believe I'm having to look at this spreadsheet when it's very warm outside.
Yeah, but you're still having to look at spreadsheets when it's very cold outside, which still feels like a negative compared to, say, Tenerife.
Yeah, I suppose. Let's not. You go to Tenerife, I go to Livenerife. That's not gonna suit anyone. But Shaughan, I had to, unfortunately, this week pass up on perhaps what could have been the greatest professional opportunity of my life. I was invited to attend the opening of a brand new Tesco in Stennismuir and help with the opening ceremony, but I had to turn it down because of work commitments. I am genuinely devastated.
So wait a minute. So like, it's like there was a brand new Tesco's. Maybe it was a Metro. Maybe it was an Extra opening in Stennismuir, and they specifically asked you to cut a cord.
Well, the guy that's the store manager, the guy Craig Penman, I think he listens to the Terrace. He has invited John and Ross from Falkirk Daft podcast down, a podcast where you and I have been guests. And they asked me to attend with them, and I think perhaps some sort of a Falkirk Stennismuir rivalry as we have to operate a pair of giant scissors and cut this ribbon. And unfortunately, it's like genuinely gutted. I've been out the office the last 2 days. I was out doing some filming at a power station earlier today, and because I'm effectively working a condensed week, I just can't afford the time to do it. So I am beyond disappointed that I've had to turn this opportunity down, because I think that of all, getting to do this podcast, getting to appear on A View from the Terrace, absolutely fantastic. I think that is the pinnacle of celebrity, is opening a new store, opening in your area.
With a giant pair of scissors.
I always think back to Paul Denan, God rest his soul. Paul Denan, when he was he switching the Christmas lights on in Preston or somewhere like that?
He started swearing.
He told a group of families and toddlers to make some fucking noise.
I presume you would have not said something like that as the Tesco was opened.
No, but the whole thing would be going through my head. Would be like, if you operate this pair of giant scissors with John and Ross, and again, I really want to tell the people to make some fucking noise here. It's what Paul Duran would have wanted.
Was there anything else available? Like, would you have got, like, I don't know, extra club card points for turning up? I don't know.
I'd have certainly taken it. I need all the club card points I can get at the moment. But nevertheless, we'll never know. We'll never know. It's just one of those opportunities that'll just disappear into the ether. You know the movie Sliding Doors? But if it was Sliding Doors, but whether or not I could have opened a new Falkirk store in Arbroath.
How big is it? Like
I don't know if
a small Tesco,
if it's
a big
being
Tesco?
opened where I think it's being opened. I think it's a mid-sized Tesco, maybe a Metro, where it's quite large, but you're not going to buy a shovel in there.
A Metro is small, to be fair.
All right, okay. What's the sort of the mid-sized ones then?
The mid-sized ones are just go Tesco.
Right, okay. I think it's somewhere between a Tesco Metro and a Tesco. If it's something where I think it is. But nevertheless, we'll never know.
That's really cool. Seriously, that's really cool that you were offered that opportunity.
Proper heart sinking having to turn something like that down. So Craig, thank you very much for asking me, and I'm sorry I can't do it. And I'm sure that Ross and John will do a fantastic job. I mean, it's a big giant pair of scissors. It's a big ribbon. What could possibly go wrong? Now, Shaughan, before we get into our patented 3-game roundup, can we talk a little bit about the lower league sides that participated in the Scottish Cup? I know this was covered on Tuesday's show, but for the best will in the world, they don't know what they're talking about. So I think it's perhaps appropriate that the adults, the grown-ups, step in. You know, we are Labour under Keir Starmer. You know, we're finally back for a bit of adult politics, if you don't mind. What did you make of it? I mean, I suppose we'll start with Wraith Rovers going to Celtic Park and getting cuffed 5-0. I know you weren't at the match, but you did take certainly the first half in. What did you think?
I must admit, I kind of thought I might switch off earlier. As soon as the draw was made, I was like, I don't know if I'll go to that. I don't know if I'm particularly interested in Wraith going to Celtic, having about 9% possession, losing 5-6, 7-0. But then I saw that Wraith had organised that day out at the Drygate.
Yeah, it looked class. Looked really good.
I was like, that looks really class. And as far as I'm aware, it was really good. They had the Shambolics playing, which seems to be like from what I've heard, like a decent band who are Wraith Rovers fans. So that looked like a really good day out. So fair play to Wraith for organising that. In terms of the game, see when you're a goal down after like about 5 minutes, you're like,
that's it. Yep.
Yes,
that's it.
This is absolutely going to end up at about 5 or 6 now. I actually thought Wraith, after about 15 minutes or so, which was non-stop kind of Celtic pressure, I thought Rovers actually done okay for about half an hour, and then obviously conceding that goal, poor for Ross Matthews right at the end, the first half. Like Celtic on the, it felt like Rovers were starting to get a wee bit more. Starting to get a wee bit more confident about their play, a wee bit more gallus, starting to be on the front foot as much as you can, but then committing players forward. But then the more players you commit forward, then suddenly you're in a wee bit of bother when you give the play away. As soon as play broke at the end of the second half, at the end of the first half rather, you thought Wraith could be in trouble here. But then everything seemed to be okay. Suddenly Rovers had possession back, and then Matthews kind of gifted it away. And at that point, you're like, right, well, that's probably enough for me, to be honest. 5-0 is kind of what you expect. And it's one of those games where you can't really analyse it. It's very much, let's just take the gate money and see what we can do with it. But so, as I expected, I suppose.
What are you going to do with that gate money?
I don't know, spend it on more cladding. Not entirely sure.
That's good. Infrastructure is important. Cladding, it's not sexy, but it does certainly keep your ground in a decent nick for the next decade, and that's really important.
I would say so. Listen, I don't know if you've seen the cladding. It is impressive. It is impressive. I wish we had a right back, but nevertheless, cladding is cool.
I've never been to Starks Park. I'll certainly need to change that at some point. I've had no cause to go recently, but I'll do. It's every time the last couple of years, just because it's been so much fun following my own team, I haven't had the opportunity to really go and see many other sides if they're playing at the same time. And unfortunately, that's been the case with Wraith Rovers.
I have a horrible feeling that you might get to see us in the playoffs this year, but we'll see how that goes.
I don't know why that is, because Stennismuir are going to automatically win. They're going to win the division anyway, so they'll be...
Well, in that case, you won't win the playoffs, but I just have a kind of nagging doubt about that.
Yes, I'm kidding on as well about Stennismuir's prospects. I'm quite gallus, and we'll come on and talk about it. Basically, you know how this podcast works by now. It's Stennismuir, Wraith Rovers, and 40 other cunts. That's the way this podcast works. I suppose the other one as well, Shaughan, Hamilton Academical fans protesting at McDermott Park during their 1-0 defeat to St Johnstone. They had a banner out. I can't quite remember exactly what it said, but all is not well. I say all is not well. I suppose it's like, imagine, Denmark when Hamlet is set, but just like all the time. That's what Hamilton Academical feel like.
I was just going to say, it's like all is not well. Like you could have said this about, was it the playoff against Alloa, and there was like a big protest when they maybe went like a goal down against Alloa. Right. But still, ultimately they came back and got promoted. So yes, all is not well. I'm still not entirely certain that they will finish in those bottom two spots. But yes, rightly so. The fans are not particularly happy at what is going on off the park.
All the stuff about selling Scott Martin, that seemed a bit strange. And the street talk is that there's some sort of, and again, it's street talk. That's we can't say this for certain, but it seemed to be some sort of a difference of opinion between Scott Martin and the manager.
Yeah, Hamilton. I mean the street talk was that Martin and Ollie Shaw and Regan Tumulty potentially might have been let go because of similar reasons as it was. It was only Martin, but I do feel that is a huge blow because, as we've mentioned, I think Martin is probably the best player. I know they've brought in Scott Robertson, but he's somebody who is kind of flattered to deceive since he came back from his injury. So I don't know if that's necessarily an upgrade for the Ackies, but we'll see how that goes.
And finally, and I know that this is perhaps the result of the whole season, Queen's Park going to Ibrox and winning 1-0, courtesy of Seb Drozd's goal with about 20 minutes to go, and then Callum Ferry saving a penalty in the 96th minute. Absolutely extraordinary, absolutely over the moon for Queen's Park and everyone associated with the club. Amazing stuff.
Just very, very silly. And like I was going to say, it's like once in a lifetime kind of stuff, but actually that it's probably more than that. It might be like once in several lifetimes, 3 lifetimes. Yeah, I mean, it's probably, in terms of the perfect way to win a Scottish Cup tie at Ibrox or Celtic Park. Obviously, Ibrox in this scenario, but in terms of, you always think, you kind of think that there's several things that has to happen. So you have to play very well. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely sure Queen's Park did. I thought it defended well. I thought the first half they looked a wee bit spooked on the ball, but got better as the game progressed. But regardless, like, you need to play well. Rangers need to play poorly. I thought that was the case. You need to get the kind of rub of the green. To a degree that happened, albeit they Rangers still got that penalty last minute. But this is probably, if you were going to choose how to win a Scottish Cup tie at Ibrox, this is surely it. As in, you get to go absolutely mental at taking the lead in the 70th minute. You then have this kind of tension and worry as the game progresses. Yes, Rangers got a penalty, but then you get to go absolutely mental when Callum Ferry saves it. Then you get to go absolutely mental again at the full-time whistle. It is extraordinary, and I really do. And like, unless something unbelievable happens, like Queen's Park win the Scottish Cup, and you would imagine that won't happen, it feels like almost quite a sad thing to say. But if you were a Queen's Park fan at Ibrox on Sunday, this is probably as good as it will ever get. So absolutely lap it up for as much as you can. Extraordinary.
Yeah, definitely. Imagine you're a Queen's Park fan on the Monday, you're going into your work and you're surrounded by like fans of bigger teams, presumably like Rangers and Celtic, who are accustomed to winning, and you're having to, what's happening at Queen's Park now, and you've kind of had a fairly an obtrusive season. There's not been much to write home about for Queen's Park this season. You know, obviously they're going to the SPFL Trust Trophy final, so that's good. There's a chance to win tangible silver there. But to go in there, you must feel about 30 feet tall bouncing in there and saying that your team won at Ibrox. It's amazing. Absolutely incredible achievement. And I'm absolutely delighted for them and the supporters. So brilliant stuff. But we're not here to basically repeat what's happened on Tuesday's podcast. Sorry, the Bigger Boys podcast. We are here to talk about the lower leagues. And we'll start by looking at the Championship. And much like we mentioned at the top of the show, we are the Ron and Don Harris of the Terrace. And much like their stable, the DOA, spent the whole of 1997 taking on Los Boricuas in an endless feud, we're going to kick off this podcast properly by talking about a team we've spoken about endlessly this season, and that is Falkirk Football Club. It was the only game of the Championship this weekend. They defeated Partick Thistle 5-2 in Grangemouth, with the returning Scott Arfield scoring a hat-trick. Definitely, I think, probably a bit hard done by that Queen's Park got that result at Arbroath, because had it not been for that, this would definitely have been the story of the weekend. I mean, Arfield making his second debut for the club. He is, he left a hero, returns a hero. He's taken the number 37 jersey that was retired after the death of Craig Gowans. He asked permission from the family to wear it. He opens the scoring after just 45 seconds and then completes a hat-trick midway through the second half. And it looked like, certainly for the best part, or most of the first half, it looked like quite an interesting game, because after going behind, Thistle equalised through Logan Chalmers and Brian Graham. Gary Oliver equalised before Arfield got his second and third, and Liam McCann completed the rout midway through the second half. But Thistle, as you mentioned there, they spent 60% of the match with 10 men. Brian Graham collected 2 just ridiculous yellow cards within the space of 4 first half minutes, and I think John McGlynn said that spoiled the game as a contest. I'm sure he's delighted with the 3 points, but Falkirk are still top of the table, and Thistle are a wee island unto themselves in 4th place, or like probably too far away from the 3 title challengers, but 7 points from Queen's Park in 5th place. Before we properly look into this match, wee correction and clarification. On last week's show, myself and Craig Fowler, we wondered loud when the last time Falkirk had lost a match at home. It was a couple of weeks ago to Wraith Rovers in the Scottish Cup. Pair of dumplings. Absolute dumplings. Couldn't believe that. But enough about myself and Craig Fowler talking a good game without actually not knowing much about the Scottish lower leagues. Scott Arfield's performance in this match, Shaughan, 45 seconds to make his impact.
Extraordinary. Like John McGlynn kind of alluded to it. Like I wondered about him. I wondered about him as a signing, not because about his ability. I wondered about his legs, and I wondered about how Falkirk would use him essentially. And I thought that maybe he would start on the bench, come on for the last half hour, and you would think. In my head, I was thinking, let's say even Falkirk are, whether they're winning a game or losing a game, bringing Arfield on, let's say the last kind of 25 minutes, what a lift that would give to everybody, whether it was players, whether it was crowd. I thought it was a great signing, regardless of how good he was. And then you see him kind of starting on Saturday, you think, oh, right, okay. But it was, I suppose it was the kind of couple of finishes that he had.
Yeah.
Because I do think that Falkirk have been, they're not the most, like they create chances, but they can be quite wasteful at times. And again, kind of McGlynn mentioned the fact that, like, maybe some of those chances, or a couple of Arfield's goals, maybe they could ended up at Rose Ed if they'd fell to somebody else, as they have done for the rest of this season. But it feels like he is going to be and I know it's only 90 minutes, and maybe they could play against United on this weekend, and he might be terrible, who knows? But it feels like, based on what we've seen so far, that he is going to be a kind of totemic figure and might make a kind of massive difference in the kind of title running.
I think so. I said on last week's show, and it's just not often I get things right, but I think I said on last week's show, just his presence there, it's not as if the Falkirk support need to be galvanised. I think that this season, Falkirk perhaps are one of the most fun clubs to support in the country, given that you thought they'd challenge for promotion this season. They're certainly doing that, but they wouldn't have been topping the table. Not at this stage when we're going into the final third of the campaigns. It's been absolutely amazing fun, but you've got the chance to get into the Premiership and you bring back somebody who was a hugely popular player there. There's emotional impact, as you mentioned there, about him wearing his friend's, Craig Gowns' jersey. And just that you've got the team, and they're a good group of players, but you've got like somebody who is played like in a European Cup final, like for the Europa League with Rangers just a couple of years ago. Someone who's been capped by Canada. And so you've got somebody who's got immense quality. That is just going to give everyone a lift. I mentioned at his interview that he gave to Falkirk TV after he joined. You'd be absolutely buzzing as a Falkirk fan listening to that. And just after 45 seconds, Scott Arfield is back and scoring goals. You could not script it. And that came up a few times. You couldn't script it. It's like, well, that's exactly how I would script it. If I was to sit down, the guy comes back and scores. Yeah, that's exactly the script. That gets a hat-trick on his debut. That's exactly how I would script it.
I must admit that like that came up a couple of times in terms of Arfield's hat-trick and then Callum Ferry saving the penalty.
That's exactly how you would script it.
You could not script this. Has nobody seen Jurassic Park? The plot of Jurassic Park is that dinosaurs have been cloned after sourcing blood from a mosquito that has been trapped in amber for millions of years. See if a scriptwriter can come up with that. Then yes, Scott Arfield scoring goals and Callum Ferry saving a penalty isn't that extraordinary, surely.
Yeah, I thought. I mean, that's basically what Callum Ferry did. Basically, happens at the very end of D2 the Mighty Ducks. Like, that's how it finishes. Like Julie the Cat Gaffney saves a penalty at the very end from Iceland. The villains. So it's pretty much.
They've already scripted it.
They've already scripted it. Basically, what Queen's Park did is no more impressive than what the USA managed in the Junior Goodwill Games in D2 the Mighty Ducks. But just a phenomenal performance. And the finishes as well were fantastic. I know there was, I wouldn't say that a degree of fortune. The ball was late kindly. He was in the right place at the right time to finish it. And his second goal, he's teed up really nicely from Ethan Ross. But both finishes were quite similar. Just the ball just very, very clinically almost passed into the net. Very precise finishing. And yes, somebody else, I'm not saying that like the players in the team aren't as refined as Arfield. I mean, they're obviously not. But they're still like high quality players. But just maybe it's just that degree of quality, that degree of calmness, that experience, that know-how, that just allows you to know, just caress the ball, pass it into the net, place it gently, and the place was absolutely raucous as well. I think that every Falkirk fan must have been, if you wanted anyone to score a hat-trick in that game, it would have been Scott Arfield, and that's exactly what they got.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you are, so let's say you're David Martindale, for example, who I think anytime Livingston have played Falkirk, they've done a reasonably good job of nullifying, whether it's Brad Spencer or whether it's Dylan Tate or whether it's both. But now you have a wee bit of a kind of different problem with kind of nullifying all three. So I think it's an exceptional signing for the last, whatever it's, third of the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, Falkirk's other goals as well. There's Gary Oliver. There's not much to say about that. Just reacted very quickly after David Mitchell saved Brad Spencer's penalty. And the fifth goal that really put the ice in the cake, that's Leon McCann getting a header. Keelan Adams puts the ball in, and it's Calvin Miller, beg your pardon, chucks the ball into the box, and McCann, it's a good header. But I suppose like Falkirk are a team that we speak about a lot on this podcast. That's been where we're joking about DOA taking on Los Boricuas. That's actually a very interesting point. And your Evan McFarlanes of this world, they will be nodding away that in 1997, the DOA and Los Boricuas, they took on each other quite a lot. So not wanting to repeat the DOA versus Los Boricuas in 1997 by talking about Falkirk all the time. But you've got to say like Partick Thistle. 2 goals in this match. I thought the first, in fact, both very well taken goals. Both really, especially Logan Chalmers' goal. It's a great goal. It's a brilliant pass from Terry Ablade to put him in, and it's a really good control and opens up his body well to finish past Hogarth. And Graham's is a nice flick after the ball's like a low cross into the box. However, Brian Graham, what are you doing?
Yeah.
For those 2 bookings?
There's almost a wee bit of me that wonders why this doesn't happen more often. And I know you can argue that both bookings, well, certainly the second booking was a wee bit soft.
Yes.
But the problem was that Brian Graham wants to referee every single game that he's involved in. So he's generally giving feedback to the referee. But as I said, I watched about half an hour of this game, just the first half. But he seemed really worked up, Even by his standards, he seemed really worked up. So as much as you could argue that, the second yellow card was maybe a wee bit soft, there was that kind of continuation of a theme.
Yeah. Both fouls on Luke Graham as well.
Yeah, exactly. And he wanted to, it was just very, very mouthy. So I wasn't surprised that he got the red card. And as much as we're talking about Scott Arfield, about the difference that he made, and of course he did. And even if Brian Graham had stayed on, you would imagine that Falkirk would have won the game. However, if I was a Partick Thistle fan, I would have been very, very disappointed at the fact that somebody like Brian Graham, who's so experienced and he's leading the line and he's your captain and he should know better, and to kind of get sucked into that, and like that was his own fault.
Yeah.
Like do you know what I mean? Like that was all of his own doing, and that's so disappointing. And from what I saw, like Thistle were kind of playing the ball around reasonably well, but as soon as that happened, the wind was taken from their sails. Falkirk got the third goal almost immediately, and at that point, it was game over. So, hugely disappointing from just from Brian Graham's perspective, I suppose.
That it's I agree with you. He was unfortunate with the second one because he was just a wee bit late. You know, it's just one of those things where it's a wee bit late. However, the first one is quite nasty. The first one, like Graham's manoeuvred away from him, and he just basically takes a wee kick at him, a wee nibble, and it's like
I thought both were unnecessary though. Like both, like Graham was kind of moving away, and I thought both were kind of petulant, and maybe on another day he could have got away with the second one, but he's so yappy. He's so yappy, and I think that the referee, even after just 37 minutes, had just had enough of him, which is kind of fair enough.
They're not playing well at the moment, Partick. They're just looking at, they've picked up 4 points from their last 6 matches. That's 1 win in 6 to broaden that. And that only win came against like an absolutely dreadful Hamilton Accies side. And like certainly reading comments and perhaps having conversations with Thistle fans, that they're just a wee bitty fed up with Chris Doolan. It feels like, from the outside looking in, I thought given his status with the club, that would allow him a lot of time. People perhaps be a bit more forgiving for his mistakes, like substitutions, the in-game management and all that, your team selection and so on. But I think he's perhaps exhausted that. I mean, you can only go by what you see on social media and what you read in Pie and Bovril, but there is a sort of a growing consensus that we're not really seeing any improvement. And the fact as well that Thistle are so far off the 3 teams at the top of the table, you wonder if he is in a bit of bother.
I think you summed it up perfectly, to be fair. So I mean, like we thought that Partick Thistle would be there or thereabouts for challenging for the title, and ultimately now that we see the kind of runners and riders, we realise that ultimately Thistle aren't quite there in terms of whether it was Livingston or Ayr or Falkirk or whatever. However, I suppose they do look like they're probably the 4th best team. So see if they finish 4th, that's probably fair enough. But I wouldn't expect them to make it past the kind of quarterfinals of the playoffs. And at that point, so I wouldn't imagine Chris Doolan would be relieved of his duties before the playoffs if Thistle look like they're in with a shout at finishing 4th. But I do think that once they are eliminated, and I think that'll happen, then that will be the end of Doolan's tenure at Thistle. It's not been disastrous, but it's not went well. He's not somebody who has kind of harnessed the fans or the team, and he's not as much as being a legend, he's not really performed as well as people wanted them to do, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
That's disappointing.
Just one final thing. I was just reading my notes there before we move on. Falkirk, interesting, they moved back to a back four. They played with a back five against Livingston. That didn't quite work. I think that's something that Phil and I acknowledged in last week's podcast, how in his post-match interview, David Martindale revelling and telling how he noticed Falkirk had made a change and how he tweaked the formation to get the better of them and how it works. He was absolutely delighted that he'd beaten Falkirk. But I think this is something he said about Luke Graham coming back to the club. Tom Lang was dropped and went with the back four with Luke Graham playing at left back. He's versatile, he can play in the middle, he can play in the left. And I suspected with Graham coming back that might see less of Tom Lang going forward, and I just wonder if where Falkirk are heading, if perhaps that they might have outgrown Tom Lang.
So in terms of Tom Lang, I totally agree. I was a massive Tom Lang fan at Wraith Rovers. However, I was very much of the opinion that he was somebody who could play for a team that is finishing roughly 5th, 6th, 7th in the championship. I like them.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's good enough to... there is a reason why ultimately his career has kind of peaked at teams that are kind of mid-table championship. I totally appreciate that he has struggled with injuries this season and he's only just come back. However, I do think what John McGlynn now has is a kind of plethora of centre-halves. Mm-hmm. Interesting to see how he fits them in. I don't think Luke Graham playing left-back worked at the weekend. I do think that Partick Thistle created more chances than they would like, I suppose. There was a wee spell where Thistle looked decent. Mm-hmm. So you will need to revisit that. I think Graham is an excellent signing, but I think he will be one of the centre-halves going forward, and then McGlynn has to work out who plays round about him, I suppose. But certainly Lang, that I would imagine, regardless of whatever division Falkirk are in next season, I would imagine he will maybe move on. Mm.
No, he's certainly done well. I mean, he was part of the team that got Falkirk out of League One, so he's certainly done Falkirk a very good turn. Now, up next, enormous match at the weekend. Falkirk are taking on Ayr United at the Falkirk Stadium. How do you see that one going?
I wouldn't be surprised if Ayr takes something from it. I don't expect them to win, but even if it's a draw, then I wouldn't be amazed at that. But you have to go back to a couple of months to how we spoke about Ayr and Scott. But remember when we spoke about them when they just lost to East Kilbride?
Yeah.
And we spoke about the fact that there's one something whatever it was, 1 win in 6 or 1 win in 7. Pretty much ever since, they have been absolutely exceptional. Mm-hmm. The only thing I would say is, see in terms of kind of quality coming off the bench, I do think Falkirk have it, whereas Ayr have maybe a starting 11 and maybe one or two others, like Watch It didn't feature against Hibs. I'm trying to think who else didn't feature. Devlin, who's made such a difference, wasn't available, and I think the street talk, as you would say, is that Devlin won't be available against Falkirk, and I do think that is to their detriment. So I expect Falkirk to win, but I think it'll be very, very close.
Wraith Rovers, Partick Thistle.
Partick Thistle never beat Wraith Rovers, other than... So I think in about the last 12 games at Starks Park, the only game they've won is a playoff game. So, because of that, I think Wraith Rovers will win, but I have no logic other than Partick Thistle's terrible form against us.
I'm going to assume Brian Graham will be suspended for it.
He is suspended, so that does help matters.
Who's their supplementary striker then? If it's not
Terry
Abladi,
is it Abladi?
Abladi, yeah. Abladi, hell. It's a terror. Sorry, that's a shiter.
Yeah,
I'll go back and ask Fowler to edit that one out. Save my blushes. They'll just say they'll just finish it. So Wraith Rovers, Partick Thistle. How do you see that one going? And I'll just say, well, edit just to say, yeah, I think Thistle will win this inexplicably. Okay, so we're going to drop into League One. And we're going to head to Gayfield to talk about Arbroath's 3-0 victory over Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Aaron Steele, Andy Winter and Ryan Dowie. Ryan Dowie scored to give the Electies a convincing win. It was Arbroath's first win in 3 matches. They're still in second place, a point behind Stennismuir, but they do have 2 games in hand in the league leaders. And Cali Thistle are in 9th place. They've fallen 5 points behind Annan Athletic, who appear to be going through another resurgence. And fair play to them. Shaughan, we will have watched the same 7 minutes highlights package from Licties TV. What were your thoughts on this match?
This looked very, very, very one-sided.
Yes, that is exactly what I thought.
Which I was not expecting. Like there's a couple of things like bear in mind Arbroath were already doing quite well before the January transfer window approached. To have such a massive turnover, you think, right, well, maybe this could have a detrimental effect, or maybe this could really have a galvanising effect. And I would imagine, based on this, it looks like it's having the latter. Like Inverness have been good the last couple of months, but my goodness, this was one-sided. I was very, very impressed by Arbroath, and there was a couple of suggestions that some of Inverness's chances were edited out, but regardless, it was 3-0 going on 4 or 5.
Well, something Scott Kelleher said in his post-match interview, he said certainly up until the first goal, he thought they competed generally well. But then after that first goal, completely knocked the stuffing out of them. And then the penalty, which he disputes, it's quite difficult to tell. The cross comes in and hits Remy Savage's hand quite close.
It looked soft.
It did look soft. It did look unfortunate. But certainly up until that first goal, he thought they were competitive. But going by the highlights, and no highlights aren't representative of the match, it did look like it was all one-way traffic. And I think in particular, they looked excellent at highlights. So it was good to see David Gold. It was great to see him back being interviewed. More David Gold, less Colin Hamilton, thank you. But it was good to see David Gold pick out 2 guys I thought had excellent games, Scott Stewart and Fraser Taylor. Yeah. Looked really, really good. I think that the ball that he put in for Ryan Dow to set up the third goal, phenomenal. In fact, there was 2 assists in that match. A really nice ball in for Aaron Steele to open the scoring, and a really good, really incisive pass in behind the fullback for Dow to run to. It's one of those balls that when he's on there and the fullback's chasing him, you can't do anything because you get too close, you trip him up, you can see the penalty. It's one of those ones you just got to try and disrupt him, get the shot away, but he opens his body up very well, and it's a stunning finish. But the Fraser Taylor continues to impress for Arbroath. So
I think we called him out almost instantly from his debut, whoever that was against.
Cove Rangers.
My goodness, yeah. But and I know this seems like a weird thing to call out, but see, even just his, if it's a secondary assist or whatever it is for the third goal, but the way he plays it on the kind of inside of the fullback for whatever it is to kind of play it in. You don't really see that in the lower leagues. Like, you often see somebody, maybe they'll play it into feet, or maybe they'll play it behind the person that they are attempting to play it to. But the fact that he almost all the time plays it in front of the player so that they can attack it and run onto it, it's you do not see that in League One. And I wondered if St Mirren would recall him.
Yeah, me too.
But I do think Arbroath have kind of won a watch, and that they've managed to essentially keep him for the rest of the season, because I do think he could be the difference between winning a league and not winning a league.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. I was surprised and disappointed as
well. I
can imagine to see them stay on. I thought that I was doing some work today. I was in with a mate of mine who supports St Mirren. He was kind of having a grumble about the direction that St Mirren are going in, and one of the big things was that he doesn't feel that Stephen Robinson fields enough young players. Do you know that's something the club really pride themselves on, is that they've got a fantastic youth academy. I think their team is in the final 4 for the Scottish Cup. I might be right in saying that for the Scottish Youth Cup. So there are some really good players in there, but Stephen Robinson doesn't seem to trust them. There's a boy as well, Callum Penman, who was playing at right fullback, and that allowed Scotty Stewart to push further forward to great effect. Scott Stewart's a versatile player, and he'll do what he's told by the gaffer, but he is seen as best like further forward than playing at fullback, and having Callum Penman in there allows him to do that. But the point I'm making is that you've got two very talented young players there in Penman and Taylor, and you just really hope that this is a loan move that makes them better players so they can go back to St Mirren and have a shot in the first team. But whether or not Stephen Robinson trusts him enough, I don't know. Maybe that's why Taylor is there. Maybe other managers would have been like, yeah, this guy looks class. Let's get him. He's probably too good to be playing in League One. We'll get him in. But that mistrust, it's certainly to Arbroath's benefit.
There is still a massive. So I agree, but there's still a massive jump between League One and the Premiership. I saw
come on, the exuberance of youth.
No, I get that. I saw was it the SPFL that tweeted out today that said he's had 15 games for Arbroath, 3 goals and 10 assists. I mean, it is exceptional, and it's not just his like kind of open play and his ability, like kind of set piece ability as well is very, very good. But it's a massive jump. So I hope this is a kind of stepping stone to him having a good career at St Mirren. But I'm still not 100% certain. But fingers crossed, I suppose.
When he sets up the goal for Aaron Steele to open the scoring, the commentator describes him as the Paisley Messi. And then he also describes him just immediately afterwards, the Charleston Messi. Now, I'm sure the Charleston Messi's Bobby Lynn. Bobby Lynn was from Charleston, I'm sure.
So I don't know if you saw it, but there's been some real, not from me incidentally, but there's been some real negative comments about the Arbroath commentator online. Not because of anything that we could hear from the 7 minutes highlights.
Oh, Shaughan, I'll give you something that annoyed me. When Andy Winter hits that penalty and the ball bounces off the beans and toast before going into the net.
Oh yeah, but we've heard that a million times.
But you know what it's like? See that beans and toast comment. You know when you ever be like you spend time with like a Wayne, and the Wayne says something funny and gets a laugh, and then it keeps on doing it over and over again. It got the laugh the once. That's what that beans and toast comment is.
But I did enjoy the fact that I did enjoy. I found it interesting that he was it Aaron Steele? I think it was Aaron Steele that he said a couple of times during the game that he is not the sharpest tool in the box.
I found that I'd read that, but I find it strange because I've watched Aaron Steele being interviewed a couple of times at Stennisbury and Arbroath. Aaron Steele, he sounds like a normal functioning person. Yeah, I would never
seems very clued up.
From watching his interviews, I would never have said, "Oh, he sounds a bit thick" or anything like that. He sounds like a guy there who has probably struggled to maintain his fitness earlier in the season, had a very successful loan spell elsewhere, and now he's coming back and he is directly making a contribution to Arbroath's title challenge. How could you be anything other than really pleased for Aaron Steele and for what he's doing for your club?
Yeah, I think maybe the Arbroath commentator needs to maybe dial it back a wee bit and stop trying to become viral, is what I think he's trying to do.
Yeah, it feels like the beans and toast. It was funny for like it's the sort of thing that if you're a thick person, you'd find really funny. Shaughan, I'm not a thick person, so I did not find it funny. But what I did was
I found it funny the first time, but that's because I'm slightly thick.
There you go. That's sums you up, Shaughan. Sums you up. Playing with your alphabeti spaghetti every night at dinner. But see what it's like. Aaron Steele became quite a popular player at Stennisbury. He only played about 12 games, but see, watching Aaron Steele do or watch his post-match interview, it reminded me of you ever been out with someone, like gone on a couple of dates with someone you really fancied them, but just knew that it was a short-term thing and wouldn't work out. That's what I feel like with Aaron Steele.
Many times.
Yeah. And it's like you like them and they like you. It didn't quite work out, and you're pleased to see that they're doing well, but your heart aches a little and just wish things could have been a bit different.
But I suppose ultimately, have they potentially lifted yourselves to a kind of title shot? So regardless, they've still put you in a good place, I suppose.
I just want him back. he was coming in a really good game as well until he left. But no, very pleased for him. He did well at Stennismuir. He looks like he's doing well at Arbroath. And just the constituent parts here, Andy Winter took his penalty well. I think he's perhaps adding something, like up front. I feel like Callum Gallagher's been quite a disappointing signing. Yeah. For them, if you're going to have any criticisms of Arbroath's season so far, like Callum Gallagher's just, I don't think he's been particularly fit. I remember when they signed him and Riley was doing co-coms for this match. You're thinking, well, on paper that should be a really good strike partnership, and you think of their styles of play will really complement one another very well. But I don't think they've been on the pitch all too often, just because of various niggles and so on. So I think it's a principal centre forward is something indeed, and it looks like Winter could be that player for them.
Agreed. I think we both agreed that Gallagher would be an exceptional kind of part-time signing, but that hasn't quite worked out. Whether that might be the case for the kind of final third or whatever. But yeah, Winter has given them something, and I think the talk is that Riley might be injured for a good chunk of the remainder of the season. Certainly Marchish is the talk, so certainly need something up there. But it feels like they've recruited really well in January. A weird turnover considering they were already at the top. But I make them the favourites over Stenny.
It's probably similar though to, we talked about Falkirk, and you think of, you sign Scott Arfield really, and you think, well, how's he going to fit into this team? And you see them on Saturday, he fits in pretty well into that team. And I suppose that you look at Arbroath and you think that there was a lot to like about what they already had, and they signed Sam Stanton from Raith Rovers, and that just galvanises the team, and he looked like he had a really good game. And when you see that midfield of, you've got Taylor, Dow, Stanton, and the other players' names.
Spalding maybe was in there.
Spalding, Scott Stewart as well had a good game. All these players, and you can see exactly how they fit together and how they're as well. That's quite a fearsome midfield compared to the rest of the division. Yeah,
I really do think they've taken measures to. I already thought they were the favourites, but now I look at their squad and how the kind of constituent parts kind of fit together. Yeah. I'd be surprised if they didn't win it.
Yeah, we'll fucking see about that. But Cali Thistle, that's a disappointing result, because I think that we've said it before. I don't think they'll finish in 9th place. I can see them overtaking Annan or Montrose. I think they'll finish in 8th. But that's a disappointing result. I mean, losing this one and losing quite comfortably in this one, and then with Annan Athletic getting a really impressive win over Kelty Hearts, and then Montrose on Tuesday night just inching a wee bit further ahead of them. They probably should have won that game against Cove Rangers, but I don't know if you've seen Finn Marshall's equaliser. It's like a corner kick played to the edge of the area. Why is no one marking him? And it's a really good finish, got to say, because you see like about 99 times out of 100 that ball's melted over the bar. Really good finish. However, Montrose have got a point, so Montrose have just inched away from them a wee bit, and they're still a good side, Cali Thistle, and I do think there are some players, but I think that these are the sort of games that you need to be getting positive results from. I do think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. If you're Scott Kelleher doesn't think there's anything between the sides. He doesn't think Arbroath are a better side. I didn't necessarily agree with kind of Scott Kelleher's comments after this game. But in terms of where Inverness are, bear in mind they are 9th at this moment in time. And I know that we kind of hold them to a kind of higher bar, I suppose. They've been on a great one recently, and I still expect them to reel in one of Annan or maybe even Montrose, who I know they got a good point against Cove Rangers during the week. But yes, this game aside, I think this game last Saturday said more about Arbroath's ability than it did about Inverness's. I still think Inverness will be fine, but in terms of going away to Gayfield and trying to impose anything on that Arbroath side, they really struggled. But I don't think that necessarily makes Inverness a poor team. I still think they will drag themselves out of it. They've got. I was looking at their fixtures. Inverness, they'll win 2 games in the bounce and then lose. Win 2 games, lose. Win 2 games. They've been doing that well, maybe not. They've done that certainly. They won 2 games and lost. Won 2 games and lost. So the law of averages, or if you're going to follow that pattern, they're taking on Stenhousemuir in the Highlands on Saturday. Stenhousemuir coming into this match after 2 wins on the bounce. They beat Montrose and they beat Queen of the South 2-1. And interestingly enough, Queen of the South are welcoming Arbroath to Palmerston on Saturday.
Queen of South, very good home record. The worst away record in the world.
I find it absolutely inexplicable.
Doesn't make any sense.
How
doesn't
that
make any
team,
sense.
It's not like you're travelling hundreds and hundreds of miles away, and travelling's difficult. And it's not like you're going to play Galatasaray away. You're going to fucking Stenhousemuir and Annan. You know, I cannot quite believe that where Queen of the South are. I mean, I was at the game at the weekend against Stenhousemuir, and they gifted Stenhousemuir their 2 goals, 2 bad defensive mistakes. One of them was 2 defenders going up for the same ball. Blair Alston was standing in an offside position, but it whacked off like Brennan Dickinson's back, and he was in really good finish, right enough to lift the ball over the goalkeeper. And the second one, Ross Stewart, who has had a really good season, actually, arguably one of the best goalkeepers in that division. But Ewan O'Reilly takes a shot and it whacks off his chest, and Corey O'Donnell's there to head it in. And they passed up so many chances. Jordan Allen missing a penalty, slipping and double kicking it over the bar. They hit the crossbar. They had a chance that they put past the post. They had a really good ball was put into the box that no one took advantage of. And I don't know. I think it's like almost becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It has to be something like where you don't win away. This team doesn't win away from home. Therefore, you don't win away from home. You know, and it should be like that. It should be like that because it doesn't really make any sense.
I agreed. I watched the 3.5 minutes highlights. There was a point where
the highlights being sorry again to cut across, man, but like the highlights, they missed out so many things. Like as a fan at the game, there was a bit where Corey O'Donnell chased down someone into the corner, beat him, and then had another bit of skill to open up space and play the ball across for I think it was Blair Alston to run onto. And that was missed out. And that was such a great moment in the game. And it's like, why are we not getting to see these things?
Even though it only lasted about 3.5 minutes, there was a point where it looked like Grangemouth had exploded in the background. There was that kind of yellow kind of, I don't know, like yellow cloud that kind of enveloped the highlights. But regardless, I tried to take as much from it as I possibly could.
But I think that they're absolutely phenomenal at home, though. I think they might have only lost 1 game to Kelty Hearts.
Maybe. Saying? No, I think they have the best home record in the league and the poorest away record. So
I think it's going to be a tough game for Arbroath to go there. I mean, we were talking about the improvements that Arbroath have made. Queens are a good side. Queens are materially a good side. I cannot understand it. I honestly can't understand it. But I think they'll give Arbroath a good game and actually put them slight favourites for it based on their home record, the home form.
And are you travelling to Inverness?
Oh, God, yes. You better believe it. I said it's a long way to go and effectively takes up the entire day. But I said if we beat Queen of the South, I'll go to Inverness. I am going to Inverness on Saturday.
Are you driving? Are you driving? Are you getting a bus?
Supporters bus. So I'll be doing that. So it leaves at 9:30. So early start on the Saturday morning, but you don't object for it. I think Inverness, you might put this down to just beaten by a better side, despite what Scott Kelleher says. The last time I saw Inverness Caledonian Thistle, they only beat Stenhousemuir 1-0, but it was 1-0 going on about 4 or 5. They passed up so many chances before scoring directly from a corner right at the very end of the match. And I think there's a youthful exuberance to them, to borrow a phrase I used earlier in this podcast. Youthful exuberance to them, and I think that they move the ball with tempo. The only criticism I give them is like Billy Mackay still features quite regularly for them,
and really shouldn't.
He must do something. I think like on-field coaching. But I think it's like on-field coaching, like about like going round to visit your gran and her asking you, give me my purse over, son, and pass me my paper there, son. Like that sort of instruction that he gives, rather than anything materially good. But wait and see Billy Mackay hat-trick incoming when they absolutely smash.
In fairness, he has went from under Duncan Mackay, under Duncan Ferguson, starting every game, playing the bulk of the minutes, to now maybe just comes on, or he starts a game but doesn't play the 90. So there is definitely a kind of subtle change in Mackay's minutes.
I quite like the subtle change. It gets to the stage where the team bus is driving down to, I don't know, they're driving down to take on Dumbarton.
Just drive past them.
And they say, Billy, we've heard a noise outside the bus. Can you go out and have a look? Billy Mackay gets outside to take a look. Bus just pulls off into the distance, and that was Billy Mackay's his when he realised his minutes were getting cut at Partick Thistle. Now, Shaughan, we'll drop into League 2, and we're going to talk about Bonnyrigg Rose 3, Peterhead 4. A lot to explain here. Bonnyrigg scored first, Peterhead went 3-1 up. Bonnyrigg then drew level, but Cammy Smith got the win at the death of the Blue Toon. Now, there's no highlights for this game, which is really weird. I went on Bonnyrigg's Twitter page, and there's a link to the highlights. Bonnyrigg produce a very good highlights package. It goes out in a timely fashion. So I clicked the link and thought, this is strange, because I searched on YouTube, couldn't find them. Went on to the Bonnyrigg Twitter page, clicked on it. According to YouTube, I quote directly, "The video contains content from LDS Sports, who have blocked it on copyright grounds." Who are LDS Sports, and why are you denying us the privilege of a 7-goal thriller?
This doesn't sound good. This doesn't sound good at all.
So Shaughan and I are doing our analysis of this match based on a 60-second roundup that was posted on the SPFL's Twitter page. So if you've come here looking for a big analysis into Callum Elliott's squad building, about his substitutions, whether it's the players that have come into the club are better than the ones that are there, how Peterhead adjusted to playing their plethora of strikers, how that big dumpling they signed from New Zealand's getting on, you're not going to find it here. This is just vibes. We're just going to vibe this game.
It's funny because I was like, right, so I would presume that a lot of this chat is going to be, if every single game at New Dundas Park was like this, then you just leave the kind of slant. Just leave it. You don't have to change it at all. Then I watched the 7 goals, and this game looked shit. I don't think I've ever seen a worse looking 7-goal thriller.
My favourite goal in it was, it's ultimately the winning goal scored by Cammy Smith. It's like Shaun Murphy, who, by the way, plays for Bonnyrigg. But he just basically passes him the ball. He earlier in the podcast, Shaun, we talked about Ethan Ross teeing up Scott Arfield to score the second goal for his second goal of the game for Falkirk. This is very similar to that. He basically just tees him up. If he meant it's just a beautifully cushioned pass, takes all the weight off it and allows Cammy Smith to smash it home. Absolutely ludicrous defending.
I would love more context, because maybe it was a really good game. Maybe there was umpteen other kind of half chances or good chances for both teams, but it just felt like 7 terrible goals. But a good laugh.
Unfortunately, because the way Bonnyrigg put their highlights together, they always tack on Callum Elliott's interview at the end. So unfortunately, I denied that. He'd put it down to the 6-point deduction they received earlier in the season for Shaun Murphy, setting that up at the end. The other goal I really liked, I think it was Peterhead's first goal that just check who scored. It was Oliver Quality, the New Zealand guy. I called him a dumpling. I call him a dumpling. I meant that affectionately. His name didn't come to me. But it was really funny about the ball's played down left. And I think it's Neil Martiniuk. He tries to use his backside to whack Cammy Smith out of the way. It just falls
quite the opposite.
He just completely mistimes it. And then it's just a simple case of putting the ball into the box for Quality to hit. I thought Mikey Andrews could have done a wee bit better with that as well. But he certainly, I didn't do too well for the second goal from Kieran Shanks. This was just not a good game. I mean, Lee Curry scoring directly from a free kick that was miles out. I mean, yeah. You see it and the ball is very impressively struck, but in the context of this match, it's just bad defending. Everything in this game was just bad defending.
I don't know if you listened to Jordan Brown's interview.
Jordan Brown, don't you mean Joel Sked?
Yes, of course I do. Yes. Joel Sked / Jordan Brown. But it was essentially said, well, listen, great result, blah, 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 1-4-3. Got a game next week. Would you do anything differently? You've played 2 up front this week, which is a change. It was like a 5-minute interview, and I very much got the impression that he would do everything differently next week because it was just an absolute nonsense on Saturday.
I think he said it a couple of times, obviously we're delighted with the late winner, but you lost 3 goals, three really bad goals. I suppose try to be diplomatic here, because I often said it at Bonnyrigg, if every ground was the same, it would be boring. And you go to Bonnyrigg, you know what you're going to get. The pitch isn't in great nick. It's the slope, although I don't think the slope affects the game all that much. But the pitch isn't great. It's tight park and so on. And I just think that you're playing like a different sport. I feel it's a really different kind of football, where it's just really, really physical, and there's just not a lot of quality ever on show at Bonnyrigg. I refuse to believe a good game has ever taken place here. I mean, this game had 7 goals in it, and we're describing it as absolutely terrible.
It looked rubbish.
But I suppose Peterhead at the moment, they're doing their best to keep pace with East Fife. I suppose that this was a much needed win for them, and that goal would have come at a massive relief. With East Fife winning at the Spartans, Peterhead really needed to keep pace, because they had lost to the Spartans previously and then chucked away a 2-goal lead to draw with Forfar at the weekend. And there's that 4-point gap between the sides at the top. So Peterhead are really needing to, if they want to win the title, these are the games that you can't afford to win. So I suppose, in a way, that I think that perhaps more than any other ground in the country, you go to New Dundas Park, and I do think if you win there, it is about character and rolling your sleeves up. And he mentioned there they're playing against Clyde at home. Ballmore's a good pitch. They're comfortable playing there. They enjoy playing football there, and they can play the football on their terms. But one of the things about New Dundas Park is I think there's a real sense of relief. I think teams are probably more relieved at winning at New Dundas Park than they might be anywhere else in the division, if you see what I mean.
No, I totally get that. And I remember you saying when Steny won there last season, after maybe a few games, you'd probably drawn about 19 games in a row, and then went to New Dundas Park and won. And you said at that point, it was like, right, that's it. Probably the title was won. So yes, a great win, a key win, considering East Fife got a pretty impressive win at Spartans 1-0. It kind of keeps them in line. But I know I said a few weeks ago, I just see, in terms of trusting a team to grind out a win, like that Bonnyrigg Peterhead game is probably a good example. Because see, on another day, Peterhead don't win that game. And I just think there's too many examples of that where Peterhead maybe let a lead slip.
Well, we saw it last week against Forfar.
Exactly. Whereas East Fife maybe just don't do that. So a wee bit defensively, a wee bit more nous about them, and maybe have a wee bit more up front. So, great. I hope Peterhead keep it up. I just think East Fife have a wee bit more about them.
Yeah, well, I mean, East Fife versus Bonnyrigg next weekend.
East Fife.
And Peterhead versus Clyde next weekend.
Clyde's away record is absolutely dreadful. We've already spoken about terrible away records, so I would expect Clyde to lose that one.
Yeah, and before we finish up, Shaughan, some disappointing news from Edinburgh City that Dave Armstrong, who's better known as Dave, has departed the club. I'm very sorry to see him go. Obviously, Dave had filmed the matches, provided commentary for them, and most enjoyable of all, interviewed Michael McIndoe after the games. And I really felt like the pair of them had built up a really nice rapport with one another. And I think that McIndoe was beginning to warm up a wee bit. There's a new guy called Tom, who I'm sure will be very good, but we'll probably have to wait another 18 months before Michael McIndoe learns to smile again.
I'm going to miss Dave. Do we know what he is off to do?
I'm not sure. He just said he's exploring other opportunities.
Oh, well, I hope he's well.
Yes, I mean, I've met Dave a couple of times. In fact, the times when I saw Edinburgh against Queen's Park in the SPFL Trust Trophy, and when they beat the Spartans, and he's a really nice guy. So I hope he's on to do something different, something new and exciting, and he can approach it with the same degree of fervour as he approached Edinburgh City. So the new guy they've got in at Edinburgh is Tom, and I watched Michael McIndoe's interview after their game at the weekend, and I think he said Tom 3 times.
Well, that's a start, isn't it?
Yeah, aye. I suppose that's it, Shaughan. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that seems like a decent kind of hour or so.
I think so. We're really sorry to the Bonnyrigg fans listening in to this, the best supported club in League Two. We're, like you say, we're looking for some analysis. Sorry, don't blame me. Don't blame the guys at LDS Sports. They're the real villains of the piece here. Who are they? And why have they blocked highlights for a lower league Scottish football match? Really keen to know. Now, finally, just a wee shout out just to let you know that A View from the Terrace is back on television next week. Please do watch. It's going to be excellent. There's no gimmicks. There's no cheap tricks in this one. This is a proper Attitude Era lineup. Craig Gordon-Telfer, Craig Fowler, Joel Sked, and Shaughan McGuigan.
What more could you want?
That's what it's all about. 4 good brothers just running their jaws, talking about the beautiful and sometimes not so beautiful game we call Scottish football. It's going to be available on the BBC iPlayer from noon next Friday, or just if you want to watch an old-fashioned way, 10:30pm on the BBC Scotland channel. So really excited to get back into it. My life has been pretty blank since it went off there.
It's been less.
At the tail end of 2024. So very much looking forward to getting back into it.
Ditto. Can't wait. Always just the best. Just the best day.
Yeah.
Like, the best day of my week by a mile is just sitting with my pals, talking nonsense, and a very, very good laugh. And hopefully people enjoy watching it.
I think so. There's a lot to catch up on. I say that quite. I'm actually trying to think what's actually happened in Scottish football. I should have kept a spreadsheet. Really should have kept a spreadsheet of all the things that have happened.
Joe Sked will have a spreadsheet. He'll have noted everything down.
Joe Sked will have a spreadsheet. So we'll leave it at that, Shaughan. Shaughan, we are going off to record a Patreon podcast. We're going to be looking at the championship managers we'd like to go for a pint with. It's similar to the manager tier list, but just slightly different, slightly more abstract.
Slightly different.
So there's plenty of football happening this weekend, so please enjoy your football. But unlike those bastards at LDS Sports, please do so respectfully. Thank you. Take care. God bless.